In the grand halls of Marwood, silence hides more than shadows. A once celebrated architect, blinded by tragedy, begins to sense the whispers, the footsteps, and the lies that move around him. But as light slowly returns to his eyes, so does the truth, a truth that could shatter everything or set him free forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where you are watching from. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and tell us what you think. Now, let's jump into the story. The silence in Marwood Hall was not the peaceful kind. It was heavy, almost alive, pressing against the walls and filling the long corridors. Once, the grand estate had been a place of warmth. Laughter had spilled from the library. The kitchen had carried the scent of fresh bread, and music from the old piano had drifted into every corner. Now, those sounds were gone. Nathaniel Ross, a man known for designing some of the country's most iconic buildings, sat in the dim light of his study. The accident in the mountains had taken his sight months ago. In one moment, his world had changed from colors and lines to shadows and sounds. He had learned to navigate by memory, to read footsteps by their pace, to recognize voices by their tone. At first, Clarissa, his fiancée of 3 years, had been by his side. She had spoken gently, held his hand, and told him they would face the future together. But as weeks turned into months, the softness in her voice began to fade. She no longer lingered in their conversations. Her laughter became rare, replaced with long silences. Small things began to trouble him. A perfume he did not recognize clung to her scarf. She would take phone calls in hushed tones when she thought he was resting. Sometimes she left the room without a word, only to return smelling faintly of wine and something else he couldn't place. One morning, Clarissa placed a cup of coffee near his hand. Her voice was brisk as she mentioned a man named Edric coming to fix wiring in the East Wing. Nathaniel tilted his head. The wiring? He had never heard of any problems. He could not see the lights, but the staff would have told him if there were issues. Still, he said nothing. In those quiet moments, one presence remained unchanged. Leela, Clarissa's lifelong friend, had been visiting more often. She was gentle, but never patronizing. She asked him how he was feeling, and waited for his answer. She guided him without rushing him, letting him keep his dignity. She read aloud to him on slow afternoons, and sometimes sat with him in silence, letting the world be still for a while. Nathaniel found he could talk to Lila in ways he could not with Clarissa anymore. One afternoon, while they sat on the veranda, he admitted, "It's not the darkness that's hard. It's the way people look at me now, like I'm fragile." Lila's voice was steady when she replied, "You're not fragile, you're adjusting. There's a difference." Still, something in the air of Marwood Hall felt wrong. The halls seemed colder, the days longer. Clarissa was away more often, claiming errands or meetings that stretched into late evenings. Nathaniel's nights were restless. He would hear faint footsteps in the corridors and soft whispers near the library. Once, passing through the hall, he caught the low sound of laughter not meant for him. It was followed by a man's voice he didn't recognize. That voice stayed in his thoughts. Who was it? And why was it inside his home? The days moved slowly, each one carrying a little more unease. Nathaniel started paying closer attention to the rhythms of the house. He noticed Clarissa's footsteps grew lighter when she thought he might hear her. He noticed Leela's visits often came after Clarissa had been away for hours. He noticed the silence was not just emptiness. It was filled with secrets. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, Leela found him sitting in the study. "You're quiet tonight," she said softly. "I'm listening," he replied. "To what?" she asked. "To everything people think I can't hear." She didn't ask what he meant. Instead, she sat beside him, and for a moment, the silence felt less oppressive. But even then, Nathaniel knew something was shifting beneath the surface of Marwood Hall. And he could not shake the feeling that the answers were closer than anyone wanted him to believe. As the night deepened, the estate seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the darkness, a clock ticked steadily, marking the seconds until something or someone would break the fragile calm. The rain had stopped, but the air around Marwood Hall still carried the damp smell of the storm. Nathaniel sat in the lounge, the quiet hum of the fireplace in the background. The staff had retired for the night, and Clarissa was somewhere upstairs. He leaned back in the chair, letting his mind drift, until a faint sound reached his ears, the creak of the wine cabinet in the dining room. He rose slowly, moving by memory through the hallway. The carpet muffled his steps. Voices floated toward him. "He doesn't suspect a thing," Clarissa's voice said, low but edged with amusement. "He's practically a statue. I could stand right in front of him, and he wouldn't know." Nathaniel's pulse quickened. Another voice, male, answered. "Good. We just need a little more time. Once we get access to the accounts, it's over." The man's tone was casual, confident. "Edric, I told you by the end of the month we'll have everything," Clarissa replied. "Then we disappear." The words settled heavy in Nathaniel's chest. They weren't vague complaints or careless gossip. They were planning something real, something final. He stepped back into the shadows before either of them could see him. His breathing was slow, controlled. In the darkness of the hallway, he felt the truth pressing in on him. Clarissa's growing distance had not been boredom or stress. It had been betrayal taking shape. But he said nothing. Not yet. The next morning, as Clarissa chatted about errands and appointments, Nathaniel's mind was already moving. He remembered a letter he had received weeks ago from Dr. Sophia Layton, a respected eye specialist. She had written about a possible treatment that could restore his sight if they acted quickly and consistently. He called her from his private study, asking if the offer still stood. "It does," Dr. Layton's voice said through the receiver, "but it must be kept quiet. No one can know, or the pressure could complicate your recovery." "Then we keep it between us," Nathaniel replied. "I have every reason to be discreet." The first session took place under the pretense of physical therapy. Dr. Layton arrived in the late afternoons when Clarissa was away, her equipment discreetly packed. The treatments were not instant. At first, only faint blurs appeared, like shadows breaking apart. Nathaniel did not tell Leela, though part of him wanted to. She continued to visit, bringing books and warm tea, never asking for anything in return. She would read aloud, her voice calm and steady. Sometimes, she would pause and say, "You seem far away tonight." He would answer softly, "Just thinking." As the weeks passed, light began to return to him. It came in fragments, the outline of a doorway, the curve of a hand. Then one evening, while standing near the study window, he saw something more. Clarissa in the lounge below, leaning into the arms of a man. Edric. Nathaniel did not move. He watched her laugh, her hand resting against Edric's chest as if it belonged there. His vision was still incomplete, but what he saw was enough. He decided to play the role she believed in, the blind man, harmless and unaware. During the days, Clarissa continued her charade of care, though it grew thinner. Her "how are you feeling" sounded rehearsed, her touch mechanical. At night, her voice turned warm and playful when she thought he could not hear. Speaking to Edric in the same rooms Nathaniel had once called his sanctuary. But his patience grew sharper than his anger. In the evenings, Leela remained the only steady presence. She spoke to him about books, about the garden, about things that had nothing to do with his loss. He noticed, now that he could see glimpses, how she would place a blanket over his shoulders when he looked cold. How her brows would knit when she thought he wasn't listening to Clarissa's cutting remarks. She didn't know he had begun to see her, really see her, for the person she was. Nathaniel kept his secret close, but the weight of it was building. The evidence was coming together in his mind. Stolen passwords, missing funds, the quiet confidence in Edric's voice, and beneath it all, a plan was forming. The house still carried its silence, but it no longer felt empty. It was filled with the ticking of time, each moment bringing him closer to the day he would open his eyes fully and show them what they had failed to see, that he was not broken, and that the darkness had taught him how to wait. Morning light filtered through the tall windows of Marwood Hall. Nathaniel sat in his study, the outlines of furniture now clear in his recovering sight. The treatments from Dr. Sophia Layton were working faster than either of them had expected. The blurs had sharpened into shapes, and shapes into faces. He had kept the progress to himself. Every day, he pretended to fumble for a chair or miss the edge of a table. Clarissa never questioned it. If anything, she seemed to grow bolder in her deception. One afternoon, while walking slowly down the corridor, Nathaniel paused at the sound of low voices in the lounge. His vision was still hazy in dim light, but enough for him to see Clarissa. He had imagined this moment many times since overhearing their plan, but seeing it made the betrayal heavier. It was no longer an idea. It was right in front of him. Later that evening, in his study, he powered on his laptop. Though Clarissa had once believed blindness made him helpless with technology, he had quietly adapted. Through his company contacts, he began tracing suspicious transactions. The trail was unmistakable. Funds from his design firm had been rerouted into an unregistered account under a name linked to Edric. The more he looked, the more he found. Duplicates of confidential blueprints, emails sent from his personal account that he had never written. Slowly, piece by piece, the scope of their scheme unfolded. All the while, Leela remained the only constant. She still read to him by the fireplace, still guided him through the garden paths, still spoke with the same honesty she had from the start. She never once asked about his condition improving, perhaps because she did not believe he needed to be fixed to be whole. One rainy afternoon, she sat across from him at the kitchen table, reading aloud from a novel. Her voice faltered slightly at a passage about trust. He noticed her glance toward the window, blinking away what might have been tears. Nathaniel wanted to tell her the truth, to thank her for every quiet act of kindness she had shown. But the time wasn't right. Not yet. Clarissa's impatience was growing. He could hear it in the sharpness of her voice when she spoke to Edric. She moved through the halls faster, her heels striking the floor in clipped steps. Some nights, she argued with him over the phone, their words muffled, but their frustration clear. Nathaniel knew the endgame was approaching, and when it did, he would be ready. In the days that followed, he installed a small camera in his office, its lens hidden behind a decorative vase. Every conversation Clarissa and Edric had in that room would be recorded. He also set up encrypted backups of the financial logs, securing proof of every transfer they had made. The evidence began to stack up. Video of Edric copying files onto a flash drive, audio of Clarissa reciting account numbers, and photographs of them together in rooms they claimed to never use. But the most telling images were not of betrayal, but of contrast. There was Clarissa, careless and cold, her eyes on what she could take. And there was Leela, bending to adjust a blanket over him, her expression thoughtful and warm. Nathaniel felt something shift in him. His fight was no longer just about reclaiming his company or exposing deceit. It was also about protecting the kind of loyalty and honesty that Leela represented, something far rarer than wealth. One evening, while Clarissa was out, Nathaniel asked his attorney to meet him at the estate. They spoke in the study with the door locked. "I want everything in place," Nathaniel said. "When I give the word, there should be no doubt about what they've done." The attorney nodded, his face grim. "And you're certain about the timing?" "Absolutely," Nathaniel replied. "The right moment will come soon. I want them to feel certain they've already won." As the attorney left, Nathaniel stood by the window, watching the rain gather in silver streaks along the glass. In the reflection, his eyes looked steady. Not like a man defeated, but like someone who had learned the value of patience. The house around him was still filled with secrets, but he held the most important one. Clarissa thought he was stumbling in the dark. In truth, he could see everything, and soon, so would everyone else. Saturday evening settled over Marwood Hall like a held breath. The sky outside was painted with deep blues and fading gold, and the air carried the stillness that comes before a storm. Nathaniel sat in the lounge, dressed in a dark, tailored suit, his posture calm, his hands resting loosely on the armrests. Upstairs, Clarissa moved from room to room, the sound of drawers opening and closing, the faint rustle of clothes being packed into bags. By the front door, 2 suitcases waited. Clarissa had placed them there hours earlier, as if she couldn't leave fast enough. She came down the stairs with her phone in hand, her heels tapping against the marble. "Well, Nathaniel," she said, her tone almost playful. "I suppose this is goodbye." He tilted his head slightly. "Leaving so soon?" She froze for just a second. Something in his voice was different, steady, sharp, aware. Before she could reply, the front door opened and Edric stepped in, carrying another bag. "Come on, Clarissa. We've wasted enough time." Nathaniel rose from his chair. "You're both forgetting something." Edric frowned. "What are you doing?" Nathaniel lifted his gaze. "Meeting there's D. Seeing you." Clarissa's face drained of color. You can—" "Yes," he interrupted. "I've been able to for weeks. I saw every stolen file, every transfer, every kiss you thought was hidden." His voice was calm, but edged with steel. "You didn't just betray me. You brought your scheme into my home." Clarissa's mouth opened, but no words came. Edric's eyes narrowed, scanning for a way out. "There's nowhere to run," Nathaniel continued. "I sent everything to my legal team hours ago. Video, bank logs, recorded calls. You've both left a trail you can't erase." Outside, the iron gates clanged shut, the sound echoing through the hall. A uniformed guard stepped into the doorway. Edric muttered something under his breath and bolted toward the back exit. The guard followed. Clarissa stood frozen, her hands gripping the handle of her bag. "You can walk out that door," Nathaniel said quietly, "but you will take nothing with you. Not my money, not my work. And certainly not." Her lips trembled, but she turned without a word. The door closed behind her, leaving the hall in deep, settling silence. For a long moment, Nathaniel stood still, feeling the weight of months lift from his chest. Then he stepped into the garden. Lila was there, standing beneath a row of paper lanterns strung between the olive trees. Their warm light swayed gently in the evening breeze. She looked surprised to see him walking toward her alone. "Nathaniel," she said softly, "you're seeing," he finished for her, a faint smile touching his lips. "I've been seeing for a while. I just needed to know the truth before I told anyone." Her eyes searched his. "And now I know more than just the truth about them. I know the truth about you." He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "Every moment you stayed, every time you defended me, every time you treated me like a person instead of a problem, I saw all of it. And I don't want to spend another day pretending I don't care what that means." Lila's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm in love with you." She stared at him, the lantern light catching the hint of tears in her eyes. "I don't know what to say. Just tell me if you feel the same." A slow smile broke across her face. "I do." In the months that followed, Marwood Hall was sold. Nathaniel and Lila moved to a quiet coastal village where the sea met a rugged stretch of cliffs. They bought an old lighthouse and began restoring it together, painting the walls, repairing the stairs, and planting wildflowers along the path that led down to the shore. The lighthouse became their home, and in time, a small inn for travelers. Each night, as the beam swept across the dark waters, Nathaniel thought about how light could cut through even the deepest fog. One evening, Lila stood beside him on the balcony, her hand resting over the small curve of her belly. The ocean spread out before them, waves catching the moonlight. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked quietly. "Everything we went through?" "Every day," he answered. "And every day I'm grateful, because without it, I wouldn't be here, with you." The lanterns hanging along the balcony swayed gently in the wind, their glow reflecting in her eyes. Nathaniel drew her close, his voice steady. "You were my light, Lila. When everything was dark, you found me. And now, no matter how rough the sea gets, I'll never lose sight of you." The beam from the lighthouse turned slowly, casting its steady arc across the water. The night was calm, the air salted with the promise of tomorrow. And for Nathaniel, the darkness was no longer something to fear. It was simply a reminder of how far he had come to find the light.